Okay, so I'm back over in my workspace and I have a completed weaving on a cardboard loom. I've got some stray pieces of thread that are hanging off of the sides, and I think it's easier for me to try to hide those once I already have this piece off of my loom. So I'm going to start by removing my weaving from my cardboard loom. And if you'll remember back to the beginning of this week or the previous video where I showed you how to warp a cardboard loom, we took a shortcut. We did not run our string all the way across the back, and that was because our resources, our yarn, it was limited. And so to save yarn, we only ran our warp strings across the front of our loom. So usually there would be pieces of yarn coming across the back, and we would cut across the back of our piece to cut those pieces of yarn free, and then we'd have to hand tie off knots where we cut the yarn. We don't have to do any of that with the way that we put this onto our board. If you'll remember, I asked you to tape down or tie a knot with the pieces that were your end pieces, and if you didn't already tie them together, you just want to be careful with that, or tie it before you get started. So I'm going to start with the bottom, taking each one of these little loops that we had kind of looped around the bottom and pulling it. And we don't have to tie anything off because we have a closed loop, so there's not anything that's actually loose there. I'm going to gently flip it over so you can see I've got the end there, and then this side I'm just going to be able to pretty gently pull it off. Okay, so here's what we're left with. Some of these little loops on the bottom, and you can just kind of adjust your weaving, take your fingernails and just kind of scratch it down a little bit to hide those. Or you can use the little loops at the bottom if you have maybe a stick or a branch that you find outside. You can feed that through the bottom of it to make it hang flat if you want to make a little hanging with it. But what I notice is that on mine, I am not digging how much space I have up at the top here. And that's because I ran out of yarn, so I didn't get to go quite to the end. And so I don't really want to spread that out. At the bottom, it was easy to kind of spread out a little bit. I don't want to do that at the top. So I am going to snip those and tie them off so that it is snug. So you're going to take two, and tie it, and I like to do a double knot just to make sure it's really secure. Again, at the top, if you didn't mind having those big loops there, you could use that to thread a stick. Maybe you find a nice straight stick outside, or a pencil, or even a straw. You could thread it through the top and create something to hang it on. So you'll just keep going, grabbing two at a time. And again, don't snip it and tie it. If your loops are really tiny, there's not very much sticking up at the top, just leave it like it is. You don't really have very much to tie off with here. And again, that's because we made that artistic choice to only warp our yarn across the front of our loom. And that's because artists have got to be flexible. So when you've got limited resources, you find a way to make it stretch. And that's exactly what we have done here. So when you're finished, you can choose what you want that weaving to be. If you want it to be something that's hanging up, definitely find yourself a little stick. You can hang it, or you can leave it flat. And the great thing about this is your loom is just as fresh and nice looking as the day that you made it. So, I mean, think about that. You spent a lot of time making your own loom on Monday or in the earlier video. And so don't cut that up, don't throw it away. You can reuse this. If you really found an art form that you liked with weaving, save your cardboard loom, find some more yarn, and you can keep weaving. You've got all these videos that have shown you the steps. So I have my weaving, it's off of my loom, and the next step is for me to hide the yarn that's hanging off the edge. Go ahead and click the next button to see how to complete that final step.